features, serving customers for 64 years. Details at specsonline.com.
Another warm day today, low 80s for the high, windy conditions today, maybe gust of up to 20 miles an hour or so. Low 70s tonight, 86 for Thursday, sunshine. Friday looks the same, and then rain on Saturday, about a 50 to 60% chance of it, bringing a cool front, so that'll be a nice break. We're sitting at 73 right now. Earlier crash on the North Freeway, inbound 1960. They cleared that, but still have some remnants coming inside the Grand Parkway trying to come in towards the Spring or Belt area. So Hardy will get you around that. It's KUHF Houston News 88.7. A service of the University of Houston. It's 9:01.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump says he thinks the war with Iran is close to being over. He spoke to Fox Business News in an interview that aired this morning. NPR's Daniel Estrin says Trump has been talking to other news outlets about the chance for new peace talks with Iran.
President Trump told the New York Post that peace talks could be happening over the next 2 days with Iran. In Pakistan, we'll have to see about that. The top Pakistani mediators are actually scheduled to be traveling abroad for the next scheduled date in several days. But UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says his indication is that it is highly probable the talks will restart.
NPR's Daniel Estrin reporting. Meanwhile, both the U.S. and Iran continue to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. That is cutting off vital supplies of crude oil from the world. President Trump had more comments online today. He wrote that, quote, China is very happy that I am permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. Trump didn't explain how that would be achieved. Stocks opened mixed this morning as the International Monetary Fund projects higher prices and slower growth. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell about 150 points in early trading.
The IMF says the U.S. war with Iran and the resulting surge in energy prices will lead to higher inflation around the world this year. The war has also caused forecasters to lower their estimate of global economic growth. The parent company of Snapchat and the Walt Disney Company are each cutting about 1,000 jobs. Disney's cuts affect its movie studio and television networks. Snap says it's cutting about 16% of its workforce in an effort to streamline operations. Today's the deadline for U.S. taxpayers to file their returns or ask for an extension. The Trump administration says more than 53 million filers took advantage of new tax breaks authorized by the GOP Congress last year. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
The House of Representatives is poised to consider legislation that authorizes a central tool in America's intelligence gathering. The entire law is called the Foreign Intelligence Service Act, or FISA. One particular section of FISA is going to expire next week unless Congress votes to reauthorize it. NPR's Eric McDaniel reports.
Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act allows the government to collect the electronic communications of foreign nationals located outside of the United States without a warrant. And according to the government, the trove of information collected through the program informs a huge portion of the president's daily intelligence briefing. Sometimes, though, the surveillance targets communicate with Americans, and some lawmakers of both parties want to require a targeted court order before the government can peruse those specific calls, texts, and emails. The government says that reform would hamstring surveillance and jeopardize national security, and that process reforms enacted in the last few years are already leading to dramatically fewer searches. Eric McDaniel, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, supporting books, radio, podcasts, film, television, theater, and more to bridge science and the humanities. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
From News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. As the city of Houston loses more than $110 million in public safety grants, Mayor John Whitmire and 3 city council members are sparring over what the city should do next. Governor Greg Abbott threatened to revoke the funding after Whitmire and the city council prohibited the police department from detaining people or lengthening traffic stops due to civil immigration warrants. News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh reports the argument came to a head Tuesday afternoon.
We're making Houston unsafe every minute that we deny HPD their resources. You know it, and I know it. This is too important to play politics.
Mayor, what you just said is false.
Whitmire and Councilmember Alejandra Salinas, who spearheaded the ordinance, sparred over legal issues and next steps. Salinas wants a court fight.
There's absolutely no reason why we should not at least make an effort to stand up for Houstonians and our constitutional rights.
Whitmire argues the city would lose at the Republican-controlled state Supreme Court.
So it would be, one, a waste of time. It wouldn't solve the problem, and we need our $110 million for public safety.
The city council will consider repealing the measure on Friday. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
Missouri City is getting a new police chief, and it's a familiar face. Former Houston Police Chief Troy Finner will be the next leader of Missouri City's police. Finner retired from HPD 2 years ago during an investigation into a department code that suspended over 260,000 cases due to a, quote, lack of personnel. Several of those cases were sexual assault cases. Finner was with HPD for 34 years, taking over as chief in 2021 and leaving in 2024. Partly cloudy today with a high near 83. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Thanks for joining us on News 88.7 and Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. Coming up this hour, the latest developments in politics in our regular Wednesday political roundup. Also, artist Clarence Heyward on his new exhibit at the Houston Museum of African American Culture, which reimagines paradise, exile, and hope through a modern lens. We'll talk with him about the inspiration behind Eden and why its message, at least in his view, resonates right now. First, though, a brief reminder that what you hear on News 88.7 is built on daily work, on reporters and producers and editors and hosts like me, keeping tabs on what's happening in Greater Houston, what stories matter to you and yours, to taking the time to get those stories right so you can trust what you hear. We respect that you understand the value of all of that. Well, it takes steady financial support to make it happen, and that's why during fundraising campaigns like this one, we do take a little bit of time to remind you how crucial your support is to keep this service going strong and making sure that it's available for everyone across Greater Houston. That includes some folks just who aren't in a position to contribute financially right now. It's why we turn to those of you who can, and we ask you to give what you can, from $10 a month to $5,000 a year and beyond, at HoustonPublicMedia.org or 888-909-0887. And here with us all hour long to encourage your support is News 88.7's Matt Harrop. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Craig. Hey, the key to Houston Public Media is financial independence, and our success in the first year without federal funding. It's you, your monthly donation. Thank you so much for your generosity because, quite frankly, we need it right now. Thank you for fighting to keep this service alive and strong for the Greater Houston area. Thank you for your monthly gift at HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate or when you call 888-909-0887.
We are 100% funded by this community. That means well, quite frankly, we don't receive federal funding. There's not some big corporation that's coming along with a huge check for us. We know that, but we are beholden to you to provide a public service for you. Your financial support gets this great service called public radio started. So make that contribution of $10 or $20 or $30 a month right now. More if you can afford it. Again, at HoustonPublicMedia.org or 888-909-0887.
And hey, we don't say this enough. You are a big deal around here. This station, it runs on people like you. 100% community funded we are after the loss of federal funding. You make the headlines happen, the interviews. Think about hurricane season coming up and what Houston Public Media provides when the power goes out. So give your donation right now, HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Public media thrives because community members like you choose to lead. And right now, that leadership is needed more than ever. With a gift of $1,500 or $125 a month, you'll join our Studio Society and help keep independent journalism and local programming strong and accessible to all. This station is completely community funded, and your gift makes all the difference. Join us now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
And I hope you'll feel proud when you make your monthly gift. It's something to be proud of because it's a signal that you know what our community needs. We need Houston Public Media's independent voice to provide accurate news that can be trusted. And your monthly gift right now is the best way to protect the information that you need on your drive to work, your drive home from work, however and whenever you consume News 88.7 Houston Public Media on YouTube. Thank you for your reoccurring gift at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or by calling 888-909-0887.
You're listening to Houston Public Media, and your support has a real impact. It pays for reporters. It keeps programs on the air. It keeps trusted news available for everyone across Greater Houston, again, including folks who aren't in a position to contribute financially themselves. Even a small gift matters. So whether it's $10 a month or you can give $1,000 a year or more, whatever the amount, we appreciate it, and we hope you'll do it now. Again, at houstonpublicmedia.org or 888-909-0887.
Hey, when something serious happens in your neighborhood, you need and demand clear answers, right? That's when your newsroom gets to work for you. When a plane crashed in Galveston a few months ago, our Galveston Bureau reporter, Juliana Washburn, which you helped bring her here, by the way, they were there covering that story. She spoke with witnesses. She followed the investigation. She reported the facts as they became clear so you could understand what happened and why. You deserve careful, accurate information. That's what your newsroom does for you, and that's what people like Juliana Washburn in Galveston stand for, and we're going to need her as hurricane season approaches as well. HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887 to keep this service going.
Yes, indeed. Your support of Houston Public Media and Houston Matters, it has a real impact. It pays for reporters like Juliana. It keeps programs on the air like Houston Matters. It keeps trusted news available for all of Greater Houston. Again, even a small gift matters. Every listener who gives helps make this possible. We're a part of your day, so take a moment now to ensure the future of News 88.7 at houstonpublicmedia.org or 888-909-0887. We thank you, and we will check back with Matt Harrop a little later in the program. For now, Matt, thank you very much.
Thank you.
On the heels of Houston City Council revisiting its just-passed ordinance covering how the Houston Police Department interacts with ICE, now Harris County may contemplate immigration enforcement practices as well. Suddenly, Greater Houston is very much in the spotlight. Officials have to date tried hard to avoid. To discuss that, as we kick off today's political roundup, we are joined now by University of Houston political science lecturer Nancy Sims and Renee Cross, senior director of the Hobby School of Public Affairs at UH. Nancy, Renee, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Craig.
First, to recap what we discussed on Tuesday's show with Houston Public Media's Dominic Anthony Walsh, Houston City Council will meet on Friday to consider repealing an ordinance they just passed that rolls back a policy requiring police officers to wait 30 minutes for ICE agents to respond to civil immigration warrants. That policy is a revision itself. Governor Abbott has threatened to take public safety funding away from the city, $110 million worth. Attorney General Ken Paxton is threatening legal action. Mayor Whitmire voted for the ordinance last week while warning it could create problems. It seems like it is creating problems. How much of a political quagmire is this for him, Nancy?
Whitmire's in a quagmire, no question. This is a really complicated issue. He didn't want it to come to council in the first place because he was concerned, not just on the issue, but one of his biggest concerns was drawing attention to Houston and putting federal and state grants at risk. So given that, exactly what he anticipated has happened and the governor is threatening. I think one of the things we as citizens have to ask ourselves is, okay, we just passed an identical policy to Dallas and Austin. Is he threatening Dallas and Austin to take their grants, or is this some kind of Houston-specific thing?
Okay, so that's the question to ask. I'm going to ask you both. Can you answer it?
Go ahead, Renee.
Well, Harris County, Houston, has certainly been a target for Governor Abbott for quite a while now. And, of course, we have Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick that lives right here in this area. So I do think it is targeting us specifically. We're certainly the largest city in the state, and maybe they do want to use us as an example. But like Nancy said, we're seeing these very similar guidelines or rules in other cities. However, Austin now, I think, is in some hot water as well because they have now started investigations in Austin. So I'm pretty sure our friends in the Capitol aren't real happy with us. This puts Mayor Whitmire in a really bad situation. He came in, he won by a rather unique coalition of voters, both conservative, moderate Democrats. This whole incident puts him in a bad place with both factions, whether they're progressives or whether they're conservative Republicans. So this is going to be a huge political test for him the year before he has to run for re-election.
This is perhaps not just a wedge issue, but for Houston and Texas, the wedge issue right now?
I would say it's a significant issue. I think it's certainly one of the most prominent for urban areas versus the state and the federal government because of the complex set of rules on each level that are complicating how each city, the people on the ground day to day that have to deal with it, are working with immigrant communities and trying to keep workforce going and all the complexities that they land at the bottom level.
Is this all the more complicated simply because we're in a midterm election year?
Oh, I think everything becomes more complicated in a midterm election year.
Well, of course, in Houston these days, every month is an election.
Well, there's that.
Right.
So, and we're just going from midterms to city elections next year. So it really is complicating any attempts to accomplish solid policy. Like we see a complete breakdown in Congress, but the city government always keeps working. You got to pick the trash up. So I fear that this is bringing us into more complexities at the local level and making it harder to govern.
If Houston City Council repeals this ordinance on Friday, does that end pressure from the state?
No.
Probably not.
No.
What keeps the left flank of Houston City Council, those three council members in particular, who brought the ordinance in the first place, from bringing it up again for a vote later?
Nothing. And we say in unison, nothing. And also, they have to move 3 to 4 votes. And so, of those 12 people that voted for it, I'm not sure he's got the votes to repeal it. I'm not sure. And I think that's a question that has to be contemplated.
I think this is probably the best example of how Proposition A is working, which, of course, allows 3 council members to get an item on the agenda, which before, in our strong mayoral system, couldn't happen. So if this had occurred 5 years ago, they wouldn't have been successful.
Okay, now to the county. A spokesperson says Commissioner Rodney Ellis plans to direct the Office of County Administration and the County Attorney's Office to offer policy proposals on county immigration enforcement practices. They'll basically have a deadline of June to come up with those. This is on the agenda for commissioners to discuss tomorrow as part of what Ellis says is a broader public safety conversation. He says traffic stops, quote, have become a common entry point for ICE-related abuses. Is this a good time practically for Commissioners Court to start talking about this in light of the attention now in the Houston area amid the shift that the city has in all these, these shifting policies over police interaction with ICE? Is this the best week to do this?
It may not be, but I think they really wanted to emulate what the city did initially, and so they put it on the agenda, which they meet tomorrow. in their usual marathon 8-hour meetings. And so he's pushing for it. But Senator Ellis has always been pretty aggressive towards Republican leadership. And I called him senator. I meant commissioner. I'm so sorry. Commissioner Ellis. I'm so sorry. He doesn't have an issue confronting Austin. But like the city, the county has an awful lot of state grants, including water, flood control, that sort of thing, that are very important. So, but you don't hear the state leaders threaten counties the way they do cities.
Even Harris County, though?
Well, I'd say on Harris County they have done more of that, but I think they tend to go a little more aggressively after cities.
In light of the sort of heat and attention of this week, is that all why he's suggesting, hey, let's get some proposals from key departments, and then we'll discuss it in June when things are maybe a little bit quieter?
I think that's right. I actually think the timing may be to their advantage because so much of the attention is going to be on the city and Mayor Whitmire in particular, that they can open up these discussions.
And discussions, that's different from force of law. And we need to note here, Harris County Sheriff's Office, under elected Sheriff Ed Gonzales, operates independently from Commissioner's Court. And the court, they oversee the offices and the constable's offices funding, but the Sheriff's Office coordinates already anyway with federal immigration officers through mandated detainers in the Harris County Jail. There's a state law giving jail staff authority to issue those 287G agreements. So does whatever commissioners want to do or not do in this case matter very much?
Not necessarily, certainly not legally, because the only thing they can do is give Sheriff Gonzales recommendations, and then it is up to him whether or not they implement those.
Back to the politics of all of this, would the city of Houston or Harris County be deep in attention over law enforcement interaction with ICE, if not for, first of all, how ICE behaved earlier this year in other major cities, but also some notion that some key Texas offices might legitimately be in play in this year's election, with voters motivated to respond one way or the other over that behavior?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely a state election year. So we've been relatively quiet in this region over the ICE issues, and you had functioning. And by the way, Sheriff Gonzales has been very clear on his ICE interaction policy from day one. When he ran for re-election, it was discussed. The voters knew his opinion, and he has stood by it and never wavered. I want to give him a note for that, because he's a little unique in that way, and yet he's immensely popular. So, but I do think this could have an effect on state elections. The state is struggling. Governor Abbott, Dan Patrick, all of them are up for election this year. So they want to draw attention to Houston and that liberal sanctuary city. So, yes, it relates.
You think they benefit politically by keeping this front and center?
I think they benefit.
I think that is key, because immigration has certainly been a great issue for Republicans, and particularly in a state like Texas. However, it has soured many Latino voters on the Republican Party. So I don't know that it gives them the overall advantage that they think it does.
Well, and I think people underestimate the impact on traditional voters as well because of business and the impact that these immigration policies are having on the economy, which is significant. So I think the Republican leadership has somewhat underestimated the farmer, the restaurateurs, the people that often vote conservative are befuddled because they need workers.
A couple more things to bring up about county politics before we move on to other stuff. Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo is facing some scrutiny over a report about an overseas trade mission which has been heavily redacted. Where did she go, and why are there so many black lines in this report? Well,
she went to Taiwan and Japan on a pretty traditional junket with the Greater Houston Partnership. And after the battle over whether or not the county was going to pay for an economic trade visit to Paris, she is now paying for these trips out of her campaign funds. I think the issue, besides the lack of transparency about some of these expenses, is her time away from Commissioner's Court. But considering the relationships and the quality of the meetings, I'm not so sure that her being away is as big a problem as you would think it would be.
I'm just sort of like, she's done. She doesn't come to court. She hasn't been to court meeting all year. Let's just move on. But clearly she should have provided that information. This is ethics, and that's something she ran very aggressively on, was being ethical, and it's disappointing to see her behave this way.
In Fort Bend County, there's a new county judge. As we discussed with our Fort Bend County reporter Melissa Inahe on Tuesday's show, Daniel Wong replaces KP George, who faces a conviction and more legal troubles beyond that. There's been some frustration from Fort Bend County Democrats over how and why Wong, a Republican and candidate for county judge, was named by a district judge to serve in the interim in the chief executive role. With 2 Republican and 2 Democratic commissioners, a runoff for a Democratic candidate to face Wong in November, it would appear control of county government is very much hanging in the balance in November. What do you make of all of this?
Well, it was certainly within the rights of Judge Jones to appoint Daniel Wong because he's been suspended. If he would have been removed from office,
If
George had been removed from office, then a vote would have went to Commissioner's Court.
Which would have been endless 2-2 ties at the moment.
I don't think they would have anybody in office.
Or they would have appointed a placeholder.
Right.
And I think that's what the Democratic candidate, particularly Dexter McCoy, is upset about, was they should have put, Judge Jones should have put a placeholder in rather than the actual Republican nominee in November.
And I think the way, I cannot purport to read the judge's mind, but George was actually Republican at this point. So I imagine.
But elected prior as Democrat. So.
And switched parties to Republican. So he was serving as a Republican county judge. And so I think the judge probably said, well, I'll just put the Republican in because that's replacing the Republican going out.
We are just getting started with today's political roundup. We do this every Wednesday as we seek context and clarity about fast-moving developments in the world of politics. Still ahead, we'll continue our discussion with Nancy Sims and Renee Cross as we contemplate what to make of a pair of congressional resignations this week, one by a Texas representative. Also, the president versus the Pope, a phrase I did not have on my bingo card, but I guess maybe probably I should have. Stay with us as Houston Matters continues on News 88.7 and YouTube.
San Antonio teamed up.
You count on Houston Public Media. That's why you're here right now. Take the next step and become a new member today. Every gift makes a difference. And with a gift of $5 a month or more, you'll receive PBS Passport, a member benefit that lets you stream more of the shows you love anytime. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. Join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
And from Baylor College of Medicine. Baylor's work centers on advancing health and medicine through research, education, and patient care.
Support comes from Metro. World Cup planning includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Our focus on politics on Wednesdays here on this program was born out of a weird phenomenon that I still can't entirely explain. For some reason, starting more than a decade ago, things in the political world affecting Houston and Texas seemed to come to a head a lot on Tuesday evenings and Wednesday mornings. I guess you could say in today's world there's something going on all the time, so maybe, this is something we could do any day of the week, but it just does seem to happen. Over and over again, issues and ideas with political implications start bubbling up early in the week and then come to a head by the middle of it. So we sought out guests we could rotate in who could offer context and clarity without coming at every issue from some far left or far right ideological perspective. Because frankly, you can see, hear, and read that all sorts of places, all the time, everywhere, and it's exhausting. What we don't see, hear, and read as much today as I think we should is calm, thoughtful, well-informed explanations about how the political world works, why people stake out the positions they do, how what's said and done often differ with one another, how such short-term fixations in Washington, in Austin, and even here in Houston within the political world itself have real long-term consequences for Houstonians. That is what our weekly political roundup offers, a far too uncommon space for clarity. And your financial support of Houston Matters and Houston Public Media is what makes it happen. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887 during our spring fundraising campaign. Let's check back in now with Houston Public Media's Matt Harrop.
Hey, Craig. Well, that was a really great idea. First of all, to come up with Houston Matters and then the political roundup. The people are responding. We want to thank you for donating and take a special moment here to recognize Roseanne, who just gave $10,000 here to Houston Public Media. Thank you so much, Roseanne, for your generous donation. You are a pillar for the future of Houston Public Media, keeping shows like Houston Matters on the air, keeping political conversations going on this show. All so important, and we thank you, Roseanne, for giving that $10,000 during this Houston Matters today. We appreciate your gift, and you can join Roseanne if you'd like at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Yeah, we thank Roseanne. We thank everyone who contributes at whatever amount, if it is within your means, to give a significant gift. One of $5,000 or more sustains the programs you rely on and also welcomes you into our Affinity Council. This is a community of civic-minded individuals who lead the way to a stronger, independent public media future. You can learn more about it if that is something that is an option for you. You can go to houstonpublicmedia.org/donate to find out about that. Or again, you could call 888-909-0887.
And we reach so many different people, not just within the city of Houston. We want to thank Ann in Willis, Texas, saying that she appreciates that she can get the news all the way out there. If you feel ownership of this station, please show your support for a resource that continues to constantly be there for you. Your support makes your favorite programs like Houston Matters come to you every weekday, 9 to 10. It helps reporters, your donations, cover the stories that matter to you, and it keeps this community's newsroom strong. I just got a notification, Craig, a minute ago that our news meeting has just started, and I will be a little bit late to it. Please give now at houstonpublicmedia.org or call 888-909-0887.
Houston Public Media is 100% community funded. That means we count on you, your friends and neighbors all across Greater Houston to fund this service, which offers trusted news you rely on for you and for everyone. And that includes for those who can't afford to give right now. It's why we turn to those of you who can and ask you to give a little bit more. Your support keeps Houston Public Media thriving as a resource for everyone who relies on it. Now is the time to stand with us at houstonpublicmedia.org or 888-909-0887. Thanks so much. And just ahead, the political roundup rolls on as Houston Matters continues on News 88.7 and YouTube.
Support comes from the Dan L. Duncan
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
offering commercial and residential property tax protests for 39 years. The deadline to file a protest is May 15th. Info and online filing at novotnycompany.com.
We get support from members like you and from electricityplans.com, helping Houstonians find electricity plans based on home energy usage and rate comparisons. Enrollment details and more at electricityplans.com.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Our political roundup continues now with the University of Houston's Renee Cross and Nancy Sims. Eric Swalwell, a Democrat, and San Antonio's Tony Gonzales, a Republican, resigned from Congress this week. Why?
Because they both have reports of sexual harassment and abuse of former staffers. And in the Gonzales case, there's a long trail of evidence. There's no he said, she said. And, of course, in his case, one of the victims of his abuse committed suicide, and it's caused an extreme ruckus around the issue.
Was that with Gonzales or with Swalwell?
Gonzales.
Gonzales, okay. I thought, and your University of Houston colleague Brandon Rottinghouse has written a book about this, that scandals don't seem to matter as much anymore in politics. Why do they matter in these cases?
Well, I think, for one thing, even though it's been a few years now, I guess close to a decade since the Me Too movement, I think these things are more likely to come to the forefront. And when you have several incidents with folks, this isn't a one-off with either of these men, at least the allegations. And just the fact that there's more public scrutiny on politicians. Now, I do think it is difficult to weigh the difference between what's went on with these two guys versus what may go on with other people that seem to have somewhat of a Teflon shield.
Who might you be referring to?
I might be referring to the president.
Yeah.
How do these resignations influence what we may or may not see in a potential shift in political balance in the U.S. House in November? Does it matter?
Because one was a Republican and one was a Democrat, it really doesn't matter. But you know something, Craig, I really want to focus on is Renee and I have lived to see the sexual harassment laws come into effect. We were in the workplace when that actually happened. And sometimes my students are shocked because they think that's always been law. And I'm like, no, This is the early 90s when this became law. But Congress did something very unusual, not really surprising, but they wrote themselves out of the sexual harassment laws. They essentially created a protection for themselves. And I don't think people noticed it at the time because there was such joy that we were actually going to have sexual harassment laws in the workplace. But in fact, they did. And they actually have a system in place to protect themselves within Congress. And so it's one has to be so egregious for this to come out at the level that it did.
How often do lawmakers pass laws that carve out exceptions for themselves?
Oh, fairly often.
Fairly often. Every chance they get.
If they can without it being too obvious. And that one just was, it's sort of like the big, beautiful bill. Every day we're watching what unfolds. We didn't know what was in it. I think the original sexual harassment laws were a little bit like that. We didn't know necessarily what all was in it, so it slipped by that they had written themselves out. But in implementation, it's become more and more obvious over the last 30 years.
While we're discussing D.C. politics, a firestorm erupted this week over comments President Trump made about the Pope and then an image that the president shared on social media before taking it down. What happened and what prompted it all?
Well, President Trump has not been happy with Pope Leo because Pope Leo has been very upfront about his viewpoints on war in particular and has never called him out by name, but it's pretty obvious who he's talking about. And apparently President Trump had just had his limit of not necessarily being praised by the Pope. And he just lashed out on social media on Sunday, and really strong, saying that, for example, Pope Leo wouldn't have even had his position if they didn't need an American to try to deal with President Trump. He pretty much berated him about everything except for being a White Sox fan. Then shortly after that, President Trump posted a graphic.
This is an AI-derived image.
That's correct. And
we should explain what it was. Essentially, it looked like a familiar, familiar to artwork depicting Jesus treating a leper, basically,
really?
Except that it was Trump instead of Jesus.
Yes, coming down and having his hand on the ailing person's
glowing
head,
with light.
Glowing with light, white and red robe.
Which the president then said, "Oh no, I thought it was just depicting me as a doctor." I don't know if anybody takes that seriously. It seems the image was self-evident. In fact, even House Speaker Mike Johnson implored him to take the image down, and he did.
And certainly his base of evangelical supporters, even they were taken aback and very blunt, at least on social media. So not only his base voters, but normal allies like Mike Johnson. I mean, it has truly been the big uniter. I mean, we've got these very conservative evangelical voters who disapproved of this, as well as, atheists and agnostics and Catholics coming to defend the Pope. So, yes, President Trump has turned out to be the political uniter over this one.
For a person who sometimes purports to be religious, sometimes sells Bibles, but he's not recognized as a spiritual person. It's not a frequent church attendance, isn't affiliated with any particular religion, has vast support from the evangelical Protestants in the U.S., to present himself this way, but also to pick a fight with one of the world's most recognized global spiritual leaders is very awkward, dangerous, and I think puts his coalition at risk. And not for him, but for the midterm elections and the people who are standing for election. It makes even those who have so blindly and loyally supported him and his team question, is this right? Because the spiritual and the faith communities of all faiths have been really at odds with Trump over immigration, which is a deeply spiritual issue. So it's just elevated that to a new level.
And not that some of these folks will go out and vote for the Democrat in November, but I think a sizable number will just stay out of the race. And in some cases, that could put the victory in the Democratic column.
Nancy, before we wrap up, you wanted to mention an individual in politics who passed away this week.
Yes, I wanted to shout out a tribute to Arthur Schechter, who was a great Houston civic leader and also served as an ambassador to the Bahamas under Bill Clinton, but more importantly, chaired the Metro board that helped bring rail to Houston and helped launch the Red Line, which was, at the time, everybody joked, 3 miles up and down Main Street. But he's part of the reason that we have rail at all in Houston and worked hard to improve mass transit. Was a great lawyer and just contributed so much to this city. So I just wanted to give him a little tribute.
Nancy Sims is a political science lecturer at the University of Houston, where Renee Cross is senior director of the Hobby School of Public Affairs. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
And still to come, religiously tinged art that makes a modern statement. And no, I'm not talking about that image President Trump shared. Stay with us as Houston Matters continues. And thanks for joining us here on Houston Matters on News 88.7 and YouTube. During the spring fundraising campaign, we remind you that Houston Public Media is 100% community funded. That means you're at the center of everything we do. We promise we'll keep showing up for you with trusted news you rely on, with clear, accurate weather updates, with stories that keep you connected to your community. Now's the time to stand with us by making a financial contribution at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887. Joining us once again to encourage your support, News 88.7's Matt Harrop.
Hey, Craig. Yeah, thank you for donating monthly. Houston Public Media is for you, the public. We are not here to benefit advertisers, big media groups, or investors. We truly are here for you. Your monthly gift will help Houston Public Media through our first year without federal funding. So please give monthly. Those sustaining gifts just help us plan better, right? How about $25 or $30 a month? Sign up at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
And when you do, we will thank you for strengthening the reporting that you hear on the ground in your neighborhood, at City Hall, at Commissioner's Court, all across Greater Houston. Your support makes it happen. Again, houstonpublicmedia.org or 888-909-0887.
Hey, you chose to turn on News 88.7 this morning, and Houston Matters, right? That matters because we are 100% community funded. All the news, stories, conversations that you've been listening to this hour that you rely on, it is paid for by people in this community, listeners who care. When you support this station, you make this service possible, you keep it independent, and you keep it strong, and you keep it going into the future. So head on over to houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Once again, thank you for strengthening the reporting you hear on the ground in your neighborhood all across Greater Houston. When you give, you keep this public service accessible to 7.8 million people across Greater Houston. You're doing something amazing when you donate monthly at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or 888-909-0887. Thanks, and stay with us as Houston Matters continues.
You're the reason this station.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Comes from listeners like you and from Baylor College of Medicine. Baylor's work centers on advancing health and medicine through research, education, and patient care.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Carr, Riggs & Ingram, a top 25 nationally ranked accounting and advisory firm, offering tax, audit, and business consulting services. Learn more at criadv.com.
At the Houston Museum of African American Culture, a new exhibit is reimagining one of the Bible's oldest stories through the lens of the African American experience. Artist Clarence Heyward's exhibit Eden transforms the familiar story of paradise and exile into a living allegory, one that explores forced migration, spiritual endurance, and the persistence of hope. Through painting, symbolism, and layered storytelling, Heyward challenges viewers to see Eden not as distant theology, but as something still unfolding today. Let's learn more about it now. Clarence Heyward, welcome to Houston Matters.
Hey, how's it going?
How would you describe this exhibit and the story you're trying to tell?
I think I would describe it as possibly questioning things that we've read in the Bible, things that we've learned, things that we were taught. It all started when I started questioning, where did Adam and Eve live outside of the garden? What happened to them when they were, banished from the garden? And I decided to read for myself, and said they still live in Eden, just east of the garden. And I started drawing parallels to the African American experience, how we're from Africa, but we live outside of, the resources that were basically promised to us.
So how does that present itself visually in this exhibit? What are some examples?
Some examples are some of the paintings, like the one called Eve, which is a portrait of my wife in the garden with the serpent. I'm kind of using other paintings from in the historical context to, form that parallel.
Yeah. So what does Eden look like in today's world, particularly for Black communities, from your perspective?
I would say Eden looks like, I don't want to say a return to Africa, but I guess access to the resources of Africa in our control. I think that technically would be a return to Eden. But my exhibition is technically just talking about the story of, the expulsion or the taking away of resources and how we live now, right? So it's not necessarily giving answers, it's posing questions and drawing that parallel to perhaps spark the mind of the person who might have the answers.
How would you say this exhibit connects to present day conversations about identity and belonging and resilience?
I say it highlights the ideas of resilience and identity. A lot of the paintings contain the gaze, which sparks conversation. It's really introspective. A lot of the pieces are me and my family, and questioning some of the things that I've been taught here in America, right? Like the painting "Food for Thought," that's in there questions like my education around the whole propaganda movement of the idea of chicken and watermelon. There are other pieces like Wildflower, which is a painting of my daughter, and she's holding the serpent up, which the serpent is actually a scarf with the American flag and camo tied together, right? Which kind of symbolizes the war against Black bodies in America, right? We're American, but there's still things that I'd say separate us, right? But if you look in that painting, there's like collage images on the leaves in the garden of like things that are almost forced onto our culture. There's children protesting. There's kids in the class saying the Pledge of Allegiance, which I believe, a lot of kids are forced to say it, and even though things may not necessarily apply to them, right?
As an artist who is using biblical imagery to make a modern point, I have to ask, since there has been this other piece of, and I use the term loosely, art in the news this week depicting a biblical scene to make a modern point. Of course, I'm talking about President Trump sharing an AI-derived image of him as Jesus tending to a sick man. The president claimed it portrayed him as a doctor, but as I said earlier, the image is pretty self-evident. What do you make of it, either as an artist who is now competing for attention with AI-derived imagery, or as someone who is trying to make a modern point using biblical imagery?
One, I'd say that, there's no competition with AI, right? What I'm making is by hand. It's actually art. AI, I think there's a use for it, but I don't consider it necessarily art. So I don't think there's any competition there. I'd say, we all see what that was, and if he says he's a doctor for the Red Cross, there's I think a faction of society that's gonna roll with that, and I think there's the rest of us who know what that really was.
Why, ultimately, getting back to your exhibit, is Houston an important place to debut or bring it?
I think Houston is an important place because they have a large population of African Americans. I think the African American Museum of Houston was a good place. So I had the opening about 2 weeks ago. The reception was good. I think a lot of people connected to the work. Yeah, so I make this work for everyone, but it feels extremely good when my culture comes out and supports it and they are able to see themselves.
Clarence Heyward is the artist behind Eden. It's the latest exhibit at the Houston Museum of African American Culture. The exhibit is on view until June 6th. Clarence, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You know, Houston Public Media and Houston Matters exist to deepen your understanding and keep you informed about Greater Houston, about America, about the world. We do that through thoughtful conversations about politics, but also about culture, also about art and music, and really everything that makes up our lives here in Greater Houston. We can only do this because of your support. Houston Public Media is now 100% funded by this community. That means we turn to you for the dollars necessary to make it all happen. In these final minutes of today's program, we ask you now to make your $10 or $20 or $30 a month gift, more if you can afford it right now, at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887. And let's check in once more now with News 88.7's Matt Harrop. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Craig. Yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for donating and keeping conversations like you just heard. Yeah, it's not just about the news. We had the political roundup earlier, but we also lighten it up here on Houston Matters. Craig does with conversations with local artists. Thank you for your monthly gift right now. It secures conversations like that, but also the in-depth local news that you rely on from us every single time you turn into this show. That is important. We appreciate your gift. It keeps Houston Matters going. It keeps Houston Public Media going, and you can contribute with your support at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or when you call 888-909-0887.
And when you do that, we will thank you for your support. You know, this whole thing, this partnership called public radio, it doesn't happen without you. Thank you for supporting Houston Public Media with a monthly contribution. Your gift matters a great deal to us, and you can do that. If you've never supported us before, come on board. Consider maybe $10 or $20 a month if that's within your means at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
And when you do, you're contributing to a station that covers big events like the World Cup, which is coming up this summer. Not just we're going to tell you the results of the games. That's just one aspect of it, but the economic impact on the city, the traffic patterns. How is Houston going to flow downtown? You're going to need to know all of that because it's going to be a big deal. It's going to impact how the city operates, and we're going to be there to cover it for you, and you're going to help us do that. When you pick up the phone and dial 888-909-0887 or head over to houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
And the economic impact of your contribution is pretty simple. We are 100% community funded. We don't have federal funding anymore. We aren't waiting around for some giant corporation to send us a large check. That's probably not going to happen. We are counting on you, your friends, your neighbors, local businesses. That's who supports Houston Public Media. This station really is a collaborative experience between you and us. We provide the news, you provide the funds that make this news coverage possible. Show us how important this station is to you today. Show up at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or 888-909-0887.
Yeah, think about the reoccurring payments that you just make in your day-to-day life. You do them based off what matters to you, right? Based off what you consume, based off what you need, what you want. This could be a reoccurring payment of $5, $10 a month, $20 a month, or you can become a member of our Studio Society for $125 a month and really be a force for Houston Public Media's future. You're setting aside some money each month to keep this independent news service strong. Thank you for giving right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or when you call 888-909-0887.
Yeah, that Studio Society contribution, if $1,500 or more is within your means, would demonstrate your leadership and commitment to protecting local journalism and reporting that is built on facts. Make your gift now, again, at houstonpublicmedia.org, or you can call us at 888 888-909-0887 in this final minute of Houston Matters today.
Think about the fact that we're in an election year, right? Midterms coming up. Before you vote, you deserve to know what's really going on. That's why you listen to Houston Matters, or Hello Houston coming up at 11 o'clock this morning, or coming up in a minute, the Texas Standard. You know, right now across Houston, new leaders are stepping into office and getting ready to make decisions that affect your neighborhood. At Houston Public Media, we are deeply committed to this community and keeping you informed. Our reporters are at City Hall, community meetings, talking about candidates from every side so you understand what's happening in your backyard. If it matters to you, it matters to us. 888-909-0887 is the way to do it. You can head over to houstonpublicmedia.org as well. Support the newsroom that is working for you. Support local journalism. 888-909-0887.
Support comes from Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods, a Texas retailer offering wine, spirits, and finer foods, plus recipes and seasonal features, serving customers for 64 years. Details at specsonline.com.
Support comes from Base Power. As hurricane season approaches, Base offers energy plans with automatic whole home battery backup with new extended outage protection. Eligibility details at basepower.com/NPR.